Marcus Chen wiped the sweat from his forehead as he adjusted the mining laser's calibration settings for the third time that morning. The asteroid belt around Kepler 442 had been his workplace for 6 months now, and the isolation was starting to get to him. Being the only human on a deep space mining operation wasn't exactly what he'd signed up for when he left Earth, but the pay was too good to refuse. The communication array crackled to life, startling him from his thoughts. "Marcus, we've got an unidentified vessel approaching your position. Large signature, unlike anything in our databases." The voice belonged to Commander Sarah Walsh, his handler back at the orbital station. Marcus activated his ship's external cameras and felt his blood run cold. The vessel approaching wasn't just large, it was massive. Easily 10 times the size of his mining ship, with a sleek design that seemed to flow like liquid metal. Strange symbols pulsed with blue light along its hull, and energy readings were off the charts. "Commander, I'm reading power levels that shouldn't be possible with our current technology," Marcus reported, his voice steady despite the fear creeping up his spine. "This thing could vaporize my ship without even trying." "Copy that, Marcus. Can you evade?" Marcus checked his ship's systems. The mining vessel was built for efficiency, not speed. "Negative. Even at full burn, they'd catch me in minutes." The alien ship stopped just 100 meters away from his position. Marcus watched in fascination and terror as a section of the hull seemed to dissolve, revealing a docking bay that was somehow perfectly sized for his small vessel. "They're inviting me aboard," Marcus said, hardly believing his own words. "Absolutely not," Walsh's voice crackled through the comb. "Return to base immediately." But Marcus found himself studying the alien vessel more carefully. The docking bay wasn't just an opening, it was clearly designed as an invitation. No weapons were trained on him, no threatening gestures made. Whatever these beings wanted, they weren't planning to take it by force. "Marcus, did you hear me? Return to base now." "I heard you, Commander," Marcus replied, making a decision that would change his life forever. "But I'm going aboard." He maneuvered his ship into the alien docking bay before Walsh could respond. The moment his vessel touched down, the bay sealed behind him with technology that defied everything he knew about physics. The space filled with a breathable atmosphere within seconds, and gravity adjusted to Earth normal levels. Marcus spent several minutes running diagnostics on his environmental suit before stepping outside. The alien ship's interior was unlike anything he'd ever imagined. The walls seemed to be made of the same flowing metal as the exterior, constantly shifting in subtle patterns that were almost hypnotic to watch. Soft blue light emanated from everywhere and nowhere, creating an atmosphere that was somehow both alien and welcoming. A figure approached from the far end of the corridor, and Marcus felt his breath catch in his throat. She was clearly not human, but the resemblance was startling. Tall and graceful, with skin that held a faint luminescent quality, she moved with the fluid grace of someone accustomed to command. Her eyes were larger than a human's, a deep violet color that seemed to hold depths of intelligence and sadness. "I am Queen Zara of the Etherean Empire," she said, her voice somehow reaching him without the need for translation devices. "You are Marcus Chen, are you not?" The fact that she knew his name sent a chill down his spine. "How do you know who I am?" "We have been observing your species for some time," she replied, gesturing for him to follow her deeper into the ship. "You humans fascinate us with your resilience, your adaptability, your refusal to surrender in the face of impossible odds. These are qualities my people have lost." As they walked through corridors that seemed to reshape themselves around their passage, Queen Zara explained the situation. The Etherean Empire had once been a mighty civilization spanning hundreds of star systems. But their success had become their downfall. Advanced technology had eliminated most challenges from their lives, and their people had become complacent, losing the drive and determination that had once made them great. "Our reproductive rates have declined drastically," she continued, leading him into a vast chamber filled with what looked like crystalline trees. "We have become so perfect, so refined, that we have lost the primal spark necessary for species survival. Our scientists estimate that within 2 generations, the Etherean race will cease to exist." Marcus absorbed this information as he marveled at their surroundings. The chamber they'd entered was clearly some kind of garden, but the plants were unlike anything on Earth. They pulsed with internal light and seemed to respond to Queen Zara's presence, turning toward her like flowers following the sun. I still don't understand what this has to do with me, Marcus said, though he was beginning to suspect where this conversation was heading. Queen Zara turned to face him fully, her violet eyes holding an intensity that made him take a step back. Our genetic analysis indicates that humans possess the very qualities we have lost. Your species' recent emergence on the galactic stage, your adaptability, your emotional range, these factors make you uniquely suited to revitalize our bloodline. You want me to? Marcus began, then stopped as the full implications hit him. I am asking you to father the future of the Etherian race, she said simply. Not just with me, but, potentially with others of my kind. Your genetic material, combined with our advanced reproductive technology, could produce offspring that possess both our technological sophistication and your species' resilience. Marcus felt his head spinning. This was far beyond anything he could have imagined when he woke up that morning. And, if I refuse? Then, you will be returned to your ship, unharmed, and we will continue our search among your species for a suitable candidate. But, Marcus Chen, I have studied your record extensively. You are not a man who runs from responsibility when the stakes are high. She was right, and that bothered him. His entire life had been a series of difficult choices where he'd chosen duty over personal safety. Joining the deep space mining operation to help pay for his sister's medical treatments. Volunteering for the most dangerous assignments because the hazard pay was better. Even now, faced with a situation that terrified him, he found himself considering the implications rather than looking for an escape route. What about my life? My family back on Earth, he asked. Your sister Emma's medical bills have been anonymously paid in full as of 3 hours ago, Queen Zara replied, and Marcus's eyes widened in shock. Your parents' mortgage has been satisfied, and a trust fund has been established for your nephew's education. We do not ask for sacrifice without offering compensation. The casual way she mentioned details about his family sent another chill through him. How long had they been watching him? How much did they know? We are not monsters, Marcus. We are simply a dying race seeking a path to survival. But, the choice must be yours freely given. Marcus walked to one of the crystalline trees and touched its surface. It was warm, and he could feel a faint vibration running through it, almost like a heartbeat. How many others of your kind would be involved? Initially, perhaps a dozen. If the genetic compatibility proves successful, more would volunteer. But, you would not be treated as breeding stock. You would be honored as the savior of our species, given every comfort, every consideration. And, I'd never see Earth again? Queen Zara hesitated for the first time since their conversation began. That would depend on many factors. The process would take years, perhaps decades. But, we would not keep you prisoner if you truly wished to leave. Marcus turned back to her, studying her face for signs of deception. He'd always been good at reading people, but her alien features made it difficult to interpret her expressions. Still, something in her manner suggested genuine respect for his autonomy. I need time to think about this, he said finally. Of course. You will be our guest for as long as you require. But, Marcus, I hope you will consider not just what this means for my people, but what it could mean for yours. The Etherian Empire possesses technology that could revolutionize human civilization. Medical advances that could eliminate disease, energy systems that could power your worlds for millennia, transportation methods that could connect your scattered colonies in ways you cannot imagine. As if summoned by her words, 2 other Etherians appeared in the chamber. They were clearly guards, though they carried no visible weapons. Their presence reminded Marcus that despite Queen Zara's courteous manner, he was essentially a prisoner until he made his decision. I will have chambers prepared for you, she continued. You will have access to our historical records, our scientific databases. Learn about us, Marcus Chen. Understand what we are offering, and what we are asking in return. That evening, alone in quarters that were more luxurious than any hotel he'd ever seen, Marcus stared out at the stars through what appeared to be a transparent wall. The view showed him the asteroid field where he'd been working, But, from this perspective, it looked small and insignificant. His mining ship sat in the docking bay below, ready to take him back to his old life if he chose. But, as he lay on a bed that somehow adjusted perfectly to his body's contours, Marcus found himself thinking about Queen Zara's words. His entire life had been spent struggling against limitations, financial, technological, social. The idea of helping to birth a new hybrid species that could inherit the best of both worlds was simultaneously terrifying and exhilarating. The next morning, he began studying the Etherian databases with the dedication he'd once applied to engineering texts. The scope of their civilization was staggering. They had conquered diseases that still plagued humanity, developed transportation systems that made interstellar travel as simple as taking a bus, and created art forms that engaged senses humans didn't even possess. But, as he delved deeper into their history, Marcus began to understand the price of their advancement. Generation by generation, the Etherian people had become more refined, more perfect, and less capable of the messy, chaotic emotions that drove innovation and growth. Their art had become technically perfect but emotionally sterile. Their society had eliminated conflict so thoroughly that they'd also eliminated passion. "You begin to see our dilemma," Queen Zara said, finding him in the archive chamber on his third day aboard the ship. "You've created a paradise," Marcus replied, gesturing at the holographic displays showing Etherian cities that look like crystal and dreams. "But, it's a paradise without the spark that makes life worth living." "Precisely. We have everything except the one thing that matters most, the will to continue existing with purpose." Marcus turned off the displays and faced her. "What makes you think human genetics can fix that?" "We're violent, irrational, prone to making terrible decisions based on emotion rather than logic. Those same qualities also make you capable of love, sacrifice, and innovation under pressure. You adapt, you overcome, you refuse to accept defeat even when logic suggests you should surrender." She paused, studying his face. "You exemplify these qualities, Marcus. Your decision to come aboard my ship despite the danger, your willingness to consider our proposal despite its strangeness, these are not the actions of a logical being. They're the actions of a curious fool," Marcus said with a slight smile. "Perhaps. But fools change the universe in ways that wise beings never can." As the days passed, Marcus found himself spending more time with Queen Zara, learning about Etherian culture and sharing stories of human history. She was fascinated by humanity's tendency towards self-destructive behavior, seeing it as evidence of the passionate nature her people had lost. "You fought wars over concepts like honor and freedom," she mused during one of their conversations in the garden chamber. "Your species would rather die than live without meaning. And yours would rather fade away than risk imperfection," Marcus replied. "I'm starting to think we deserve each other." It was then that Marcus made his decision, though he wouldn't announce it for another day. The choice wasn't really about the compensation, or even about the honor of saving a species. It was about the possibility of creating something new, something that could be greater than either humans or Etherians alone. But, first, he had conditions of his own to negotiate. Marcus found Queen Zara in her private study the next morning, surrounded by holographic projections of genetic sequences that danced through the air like luminous DNA chains. She looked up as he entered, and he could see hope and apprehension warring in her violet eyes. "I've made my decision," he said without preamble. "But I have conditions." She gestured for him to sit in a chair that materialized from the floor. "Name them." "First, I want regular communication with my family on Earth. Not just financial support, actual contact. They need to know I'm alive and, well, even if they can't know the details. That can be arranged through carefully worded messages." "What else?" "Second, any children that result from this program get to choose their own futures. They're not automatically committed to continuing your species' reproduction." Queen Zara nodded thoughtfully. "We would not force them, though we hope they would see the value in what we are attempting. Third, I want to be involved in every aspect of this process. Not just the biological component, but the planning, the decision-making, all of it. If I'm going to help save your species, I want to understand exactly how and why. You would essentially become an advisor to the Etherian Council. That is unprecedented." so is your entire situation, Marcus pointed out. Which brings me to my final condition. I want to visit other Etherian worlds, meet the people who would potentially be part of this program. If I'm going to father their children, I want to know who they are as individuals. Queen Zara stood and walked to a wall that suddenly became transparent, revealing a view of the nearest Etherian world, a planet whose cities gleamed like jewels against a purple sky. Your conditions are more than reasonable. In fact, they demonstrate exactly the kind of thinking we hope to reintroduce into our bloodline. Then, we have an agreement? We do. She turned back to him with something that might have been relief. The council will convene tomorrow to formally accept your participation. But, Marcus, I must warn you, not all of my people are enthusiastic about this plan. Some view the introduction of human genetics as a degradation of our racial purity. Well, they'll just have to get over it, Marcus said with a grin that made Queen Zara's eyes widen. Besides, from what I've seen of your racial purity, it's exactly what's killing you. The next day, Marcus found himself standing before the Etherian High Council, a group of 12 beings whose ages he couldn't begin to guess. They sat in a circular chamber where the walls showed constantly shifting views of Etherian worlds, and their collective attention felt like standing under a microscope. Human Marcus Chen, spoke the eldest, a being whose skin held the faint translucence of great age. You understand the magnitude of what we ask. I understand that you're asking me to help create a new generation that combines the best of both our species, Marcus replied, keeping his voice steady. And, I understand that failure could mean the end of the Etherian civilization. And, you accept this responsibility freely? Marcus thought of his sister Emma, finally, free from the crushing debt of her medical bills. He thought of his parents, who could now retire without financial worry. But, mostly, he thought of the possibilities stretching ahead, the chance to be part of something that had never been attempted in the history of the galaxy. I do. The council deliberated in a language of harmonics that bypassed his translation implant entirely. Finally, the eldest spoke again. The council accepts your participation by a vote of 9-3. Queen Zara will oversee the initial stages of the program. Over the following weeks, Marcus was introduced to the 12 female Etherians who had volunteered for the program. Each meeting was conducted with careful formality, but he insisted on getting to know them as individuals rather than just genetic contributors. There was Dr. Lyra, a scientist who specialized in xenobiology and approached the entire project with clinical fascination. Commander Vax, a military officer whose barely contained aggression reminded Marcus that not all Etherians had lost their fire. Poet Essence, who spoke in metaphors that made his head spin but whose passion for language was infectious. Each woman was remarkable in her own way, but all shared a common desperation masked by Etherian dignity. They were the last generation who might be able to bear children, and they knew it. The process will not be conventional, Dr. Lyra explained during one of their planning sessions. Direct genetic combination is only the beginning. We must also ensure psychological compatibility, cultural integration, and optimal expression of desired traits. You mean you're going to genetically engineer the children, Marcus said. To some degree, yes. We cannot simply hope that random combination will produce the results we need. Marcus spent days studying Etherian genetic technology, marveling at their ability to isolate and enhance specific traits. But he also insisted on understanding the risks. What if the hybrid children don't inherit what you're hoping for? He asked Queen Zara during one of their evening walks through the ship's garden. Then, we will have learned something valuable, and we will try again with different approaches. But, Marcus, I have studied human genetics extensively. Your species' adaptability isn't just biological, it's psychological, cultural, almost spiritual. You find ways to thrive in situations that would destroy most species. Or we find ways to destroy ourselves trying, Marcus pointed out. Even that demonstrates the passionate engagement with existence that we have lost. We Etherians accept defeat with grace and dignity. Humans rage against it, even when rage is futile. The first procedure took place in a medical facility that looked more like a temple than a laboratory. Marcus lay on a platform that somehow read his vital signs without any attached monitors, while Dr. Lyra and her team worked with genetic samples through holographic interfaces. The initial combination has been successful, she announced after several hours. Conception has occurred in all 12 candidates. Marcus felt a strange mix of pride and terror. Somewhere in this ship, 12 new lives were beginning, lives that would carry both his genes and the future of an entire civilization. But the real work was just beginning. Queen Zara had not exaggerated when she spoke of psychological compatibility. Each of the candidates required different approaches to maintain the pregnancy, and Marcus found himself playing roles he'd never imagined. Dr. Lyra needed intellectual stimulation, so he spent hours discussing human scientific methods and the messy, trial-and-error approach that had somehow led to breakthrough discoveries. Commander Vex required proof that the hybrid children would retain fighting spirit, so Marcus shared stories of human military history, emphasizing the countless times humans had won battles against impossible odds through sheer stubborn refusal to surrender. Poet Essence was perhaps the most challenging. She needed emotional connection on a level that Etherian society had largely abandoned. Marcus found himself sharing not just stories of human art and literature, but personal memories of loss, love, and the bittersweet beauty of mortality. Your species knows it will die, she observed during one of their sessions. And yet this knowledge makes you love more fiercely, not less. How is this possible? Maybe because we know our time is limited, Marcus replied. We can't afford to waste it on being perfect. We have to be real instead. 3 months into the pregnancies, Marcus received his first communication from Earth. The message had been carefully crafted to avoid revealing his location or situation, but hearing his sister's voice again brought tears to his eyes. Marcus, I don't know where you are or what you're doing out there, but whatever it is, thank you. The doctors say I'm completely cured. Mom and Dad are doing well, and Tommy just got accepted to the engineering program at MIT. We miss you, but we know you're doing something important. Come home safe. Queen Zara found him later that day, staring out at the stars with the message player in his hands. Second thoughts, she asked gently. No. Just remembering why I'm here. Your family means everything to you. Family is what makes humans fight so hard for survival. Not just our genetic family, but the larger family of our species, our communities, our friends. We're pack animals, even when we pretend to be individuals. Perhaps that is what we need to learn, how to care about something beyond ourselves again. The pregnancies progressed with careful monitoring and constant adjustment. Marcus was amazed by Etherian medical technology, which could prevent complications before they developed and ensure optimal nutrition and development for the growing children. But he also insisted on introducing elements of human prenatal care, music, talking to the unborn children, even the simple act of a father's hand on the mother's stomach. These gestures serve no biological function, Dr. Lyra observed during one of these sessions. They serve an emotional function, Marcus replied. These children need to know they're wanted, not just needed. There's a difference. 6 months in, the first signs of success became apparent. Scans showed that the developing children possessed hybrid characteristics, enhanced Etherian cognitive capacity combined with the emotional range and adaptability markers typical of humans. But, more importantly, the mothers themselves were changing. Dr. Lyra had begun approaching her research with an enthusiasm that bordered on obsession. Commander Vex was developing tactical scenarios that emphasized creative problem-solving rather than overwhelming force. Poet Essence was writing verses that actually moved her listeners to tears, something that hadn't happened in Etherian art for centuries. The pregnancy hormones are having unexpected effects, Dr. Lyra reported to the council. The candidates are experiencing emotional ranges we have not seen in our people for generations. Is this dangerous? Asked one of the counselors. Unknown. But the changes appear to be positive. They are becoming more human, for lack of a better term. Marcus attended this council session and spoke up. Maybe that's exactly what needs to happen. Maybe saving your species means becoming something new, not just continuing what you were. The council deliberated this development for hours. Some members were alarmed by the changes, viewing them as corruption of Etherian purity. Others saw them as evidence that the program was working better than anticipated. The question, said the eldest counselor, is whether we are saving our species or replacing it with something else entirely. Does it matter, Marcus asked, as long as something survives? 9 months after conception, the first child was born. Marcus stood in the delivery chamber, watching Dr. Lyra hold her newborn daughter with an expression of wonder he'd never seen on an Etherian face before. The baby was beautiful, clearly a hybrid, with skin that held a faint luminescence but features that were more human than Etherian. But it was her cry that stopped everyone in the room. It wasn't the quiet, dignified sound Etherian infants typically made. It was loud, demanding, full of life and fury and an absolute refusal to be ignored. She's perfect, Dr. Lyra whispered, tears streaming down her face. Over the following weeks, 11 more children were born, each one unique but all sharing that same vibrant life force that their mothers had begun to develop. Marcus found himself a father 12 times over, to children who represented the hope of an entire civilization. But, as the children grew, it became clear that the program had succeeded beyond their wildest expectations. The hybrid infants were not just viable, they were extraordinary. They learned at accelerated rates, demonstrated problem-solving abilities that surpassed either parent species, and, most remarkably, they seemed to possess an innate understanding of how to balance logic with emotion. They are what we hoped they would be, Queen Zara told Marcus as they watched the children playing in a specially designed nursery. And, more than we dared dream. They're going to change everything, Marcus replied, watching his daughter with Dr. Lyra solve a puzzle that should have been beyond her developmental stage. Not just for your people, but for mine too. What do you mean? Marcus smiled, seeing possibilities stretching out before them like stars in the void. I mean, these children are going to build bridges between our species that we never imagined possible. They're going to inherit the galaxy. But, even as he spoke, Marcus couldn't shake the feeling that their success had attracted attention from quarters they hadn't anticipated. The Etherian Empire wasn't the only advanced civilization in this part of the galaxy, and not all of them would view the emergence of a hybrid species as a positive development. The attack came without warning on a Tuesday that had started like any other. Marcus was in the nursery with the children, now 6 months old and developing at an incredible rate, when the ship's alarms began screaming. The crystalline walls shifted from their usual soft blue to urgent red, and Queen Zara's voice echoed through the ship's communication system. All personnel to emergency stations. We are under attack by unknown vessels. Marcus gathered the nearest children, his protective instincts kicking in with a ferocity that surprised him. Dr. Lyra and the other mothers were already moving with trained efficiency, activating emergency protocols that would shield the nursery with the ship's most powerful defensive barriers. Who would attack us? Dr. Lyra asked, her scientific curiosity warring with maternal fear as she held her daughter close. Someone who sees our children as a threat, Marcus replied grimly. The ship shuddered under weapon impacts that somehow penetrated their supposedly impregnable shields. Through the transparent walls, Marcus could see sleek black vessels that moved with predatory grace, their hulls seeming to absorb light rather than reflect it. Commander Vex burst into the nursery, her face grim. Shadows, she announced, and several of the Etherian mothers gasped in recognition. What are shadows? Marcus demanded. An ancient enemy, Queen Zara's voice said as she appeared in the doorway. They were banished from this sector millennia ago for genetic crimes against other species. They view biological purity as sacred and hybrid creatures as abominations. Another impact shook the ship, and Marcus could hear the distant sound of hull breaches being sealed. How did they find us? The same way predators always find their prey, they followed the scent of something new and different. Queen Zara moved to activate additional defenses, her fingers dancing over controls that responded to her touch. They must have been monitoring our communications, waiting for evidence of the hybrid program. Marcus looked around at the children, his children, and felt a rage building that was purely human in its intensity. These beings had come to destroy innocent infants because they didn't fit some twisted ideal of species purity. How do we fight them? He asked. We don't, Commander Vex said bluntly. Our weapons are designed for precision, not warfare. The Etherian Empire has been at peace for so long that our military capabilities have atrophied. Then, we run. Our engines are damaged. they knew exactly where to hit us. Marcus studied the tactical display showing their attackers. The shadow vessels moved with coordinated precision, but their formation was almost too perfect. It reminded him of something he'd seen before, in the asteroid mines where he'd worked. They're hurting us, he realized. Like predators driving prey toward a kill zone. What do you mean? Queen Zara asked. Look at their positioning. They're not trying to destroy us quickly, they're forcing us toward a specific location. They want to capture the children alive. The implications of that statement sent a chill through everyone in the room. If the shadows wanted the hybrid children alive, it wasn't for any benevolent purpose. There, Marcus pointed to a gap in the shadow formation. They've left us one escape route, but it leads directly into that asteroid field. They're planning to trap us there. Then, we don't take the obvious path, Queen Zara said, her violet eyes flashing with something that reminded Marcus why she was a queen. Commander Vex, can you access the mining ship? The human vessel? Yes, but why? Marcus began to understand. Because they're not scanning for it. To them, it's just another piece of debris. Exactly. We transfer the children to your ship and escape while they're focused on capturing our vessel. It was a desperate plan, but it was their only option. Under cover of the ship's defensive fire, Marcus and a small team began moving the children to his mining vessel. The transition was harrowing. The babies were too young to understand the danger but seemed to sense the tension around them. As they worked, Marcus noticed something remarkable. The hybrid children weren't crying or showing distress despite the chaos around them. Instead, they seemed alert and aware, their large eyes tracking the adults' movements with an intelligence that was unsettling in being so young. They understand, Dr. Lyra murmured as she strapped her daughter into an improvised safety harness. They actually understand what's happening. Of course they do, Marcus replied, lifting one of the boys who had somehow managed to crawl toward the action rather than away from it. They're half human. Humans thrive on chaos. The evacuation was nearly complete when the shadow forces made their move. The main Etherian ship's shields finally collapsed under sustained fire, and boarding pods attached to the hull like metallic parasites. Through the internal monitors, Marcus could see tall, ethereal beings in dark armor moving through the corridors with lethal purpose. They're beautiful, whispered Poetessence, watching the invaders with horrified fascination. And they were. The shadows possessed an alien elegance that was somehow terrible to behold. They moved like dancers, their forms seeming to flow rather than walk, but their weapons cut down everything in their path with clinical efficiency. Beauty without mercy, Queen Zara said bitterly. They exemplify everything wrong with the concept of genetic purity. The last child was secured just as the shadows reached the nursery level. Marcus sealed the airlock between his ship and the Etherian vessel, then activated his mining ship's stealth systems technology designed to hide from asteroid scanners that might just work against alien sensors. Everyone hold on, he warned, firing the ship's engines and diving into the asteroid field at a speed that would have been suicidal under normal circumstances. The mining ship wasn't built for evasive maneuvers, but Marcus had spent months navigating asteroid fields and knew how to use the rocky debris to his advantage. He threaded the ship between massive chunks of stone and metal, using their bulk to mask his vessel's energy signature. Behind them, the Etherian ship's destruction lit up the void like a dying star. The shadows had realized their mistake and were now hunting frantically through the debris field, but Marcus kept his ship powered down to minimal levels and drifted with the asteroids. They're scanning for life signs, Commander Vex reported, monitoring the enemy communications. But the asteroid field is generating too much interference. For 6 hours, they played a deadly game of hide and seek among the spinning rocks. The children remained remarkably calm throughout the ordeal, as if they understood that silence meant survival. Marcus found himself marveling at their adaptability. They were already displaying the human ability to thrive under pressure combined with Etherian intelligence. Finally, the shadow ships gave up their search and departed, apparently believing that their targets had been destroyed with the main vessel. Marcus waited another hour before powering up his communications array and sending an encrypted message to the nearest Etherian outpost. This is Marcus Chen aboard the mining vessel Prospector. I have 12 hybrid children and 7 adult survivors. We need immediate evacuation to a secure location. The response came within minutes. Marcus Chen, this is Admiral Nexus of the Etherian Defense Fleet. Thank the ancestors you're alive. We're dispatching a full battle group to your coordinates. Negative, Marcus replied immediately. A large military presence will just attract more attention. Send a single fast courier ship and we'll rendezvous at coordinates I'll transmit separately. Human, you do not have the authority to. Admiral, Queen Zara interrupted, taking over the communication. This human has just saved the future of our species. I suggest you listen to him. The rendezvous went smoothly, and, within hours they were aboard an Etherian courier ship heading for the Empire's most secure research facility. But, Marcus knew their troubles were far from over. The shadow attack had proven that the hybrid program was seen as a threat by other advanced species. We need to accelerate the program, he told the emergency session of the Etherian Council that convened as soon as they reached safety. If there are 12 healthy children, we can expand the genetic base much faster than originally planned. Agreed, said the eldest counselor. But, we also need to consider the political implications. The Shadow's attack suggests that other species view our program as a threat to galactic stability. Then, maybe it's time to stop hiding, Marcus suggested. Make the program public. Show the galaxy that these children aren't weapons or abominations, they're the future. Dr. Lyra, who had been analyzing data from the children's development, spoke up. Marcus is right. The children are developing capabilities that could benefit all spacefaring species. Enhanced problem-solving, emotional resilience, technological intuition, these are traits that could help solve galactic conflicts rather than create them. Over the following months, the hybrid program became the galaxy's most closely watched experiment. Representatives from dozens of species came to observe the children, and the results were consistently impressive. The hybrids displayed an uncanny ability to bridge cultural and biological differences, often serving as translators not just of language but of fundamental worldviews. Marcus found himself thrust into a role he'd never anticipated, not just as a father, but as an advocate for interspecies cooperation. His children had inherited his curiosity and determination along with Etherian intelligence and emotional depth. They were natural diplomats, able to find common ground between species that had been enemies for centuries. They're going to change everything, he told Queen Zara as they watched the children, now 2 years old, playing with visitors from 6 different species. Not through conquest or force, but through understanding. Yes, she agreed. But, Marcus, there is something else we must discuss. The program has been more successful than we dared hope. Other species are now requesting their own hybrid experiments. With humans as the genetic template? Your species has proven to be remarkably compatible with a wide range of alien genetics. The crystalline hive wants to create human crystal hybrids. The gas dancers are interested in atmospheric adaptation combinations. Even some shadow defectors have approached us about redemption through genetic integration. Marcus felt the weight of responsibility settling on his shoulders like a physical burden. You're asking me to be the father of not just a new species, but multiple new species. We're asking you to help guide the evolution of galactic civilization itself. Looking out at his children, watching them laugh and play with beings from across the galaxy, Marcus realized that his decision in that asteroid field had led to something far greater than either he or Queen Zara had imagined. The children weren't just saving the Etherian Empire, they were creating a new model for how different species could coexist and thrive together. Then, I guess we'd better make sure we get it right, he said finally. The future stretched ahead of them, uncertain but full of possibility. In choosing to trust an alien queen with humanity's genetic legacy, Marcus had set in motion changes that would reshape the galaxy. And, as he watched his children, human and Etherian and something entirely new, he knew that whatever challenges lay ahead, they would face them together. The hybrid program had begun with the simple goal of saving one dying species. But, it had become something much more profound, proof that the galaxy's greatest strength lay not in the purity of any single race, but in the infinite possibilities that emerged when different forms of life chose cooperation over conflict. Marcus smiled as his daughter looked up at him with eyes that held the wisdom of an ancient civilization and the unstoppable curiosity of humanity. The future belonged to beings like her, and he couldn't wait to see what wonders they would create.